do you feel like you can do this all by yourself, or do you feel like you need to have a team and some help and some like guidance and mentors and stuff like that?
So number one, it's really astute for you to realize that you, as a human, as we all are, that if there's not something that's really that you're not putting your energy into, that we tend to fill that void with a bunch of other distractions. That's just a human nature thing, right? So I think that's one of the reasons that having something important to work upon, even if it's just like that slow moving the car forward, is really important, because then everything else turns down in volume. Um, as for me, it's a mixture. There are parts of this that I believe are mine to figure out, and there's parts of it that I rely upon very good friends and confidants in order to work with. There's parts of this in my mission that I know will involve rebuilding a team and rebuilding a company. And I'm beginning to look at that, like just knowing that that's going to come back into my life. I know that in totality, I can't do this alone, like 100%. And so instead, what I'm doing, instead of everything has to be done together or everything has to be done alone paradigm, I'm getting away from binary. Like, what parts of this are best done for me in a little bit more isolation, because I like to now and then come to like South Dakota, where I am now, and to spend time in the absence of others, thinking and pondering and doing other stuff, right? So those are things that I could do alone. There's a lot of the rest of this, such as validating views and getting some competing points of opinion, and getting people who believe in the mission and want to help this take forward, and doing some of the tasks that I find very energy sucking, that they might enjoy doing, and allowing them to like take this going forward,
Like
right?
converting videos and uploading videos to YouTube and coming up with the keywords and all that crap.
100%, brother.
Yeah.
Like those are things that I am capable of doing, and I'm capable of doing well, and would exhaust me.
Shout
And so
out,
I just
shout
want to
out to
do less and less.
Jason and Hamilton, who are helping me put this out. If we put this out as a podcast episode, because they've been doing that for me. It used to take me 20 hours of editing to do one podcast episode, and I decided I was gonna sub that out. And now these guys do it; they're great at it, and you know, it's like that's partly one of the reasons why I'm like, I got to sort of make some money, because I'm paying people to help me put out my work and
Yeah,
my podcast and stuff, but I don't have anything coming in. So I'm like,
yeah,
it's kind of like it's okay for now, because Bitcoin's keeps, going up every once in a while, and that provides some cushion. But I imagine for yourself, it's probably kind of similar. Is that like, you're an early Bitcoiner, you still hold Bitcoin. What do you think is it about you or about Bitcoin that's like, you don't really talk about it, and you're just, you were in like when I was. Why do you think it's not motivating you, or like, why aren't you involved in the space?
Oh, so the question a friend of mine gave to me, his name's Yannick Silver, and I don't know that it's his, I just learned it from him, is just, I asked this question to me, like, what is mine to do, right? Like what is mine to do? And I asked that over and over, and I ask it consistently. And so in my larger mission, like if we're going to liberate humanity and consciousness, financial sovereignty and financial independence is a huge part of this,
Mm-hmm.
right? However, I've just realized that while I am excited and I love having conversations like you and I are having, it's not my thing to do day to day. That there are other people who will love, like you, to specialize more into this, or Garrett Gunderson, right? Like, I would love to
Mm-hmm.
specialize more into this and go deeper and want to take people on this journey.
Right.
Awesome. Like, I believe in having these beautiful partnerships. And when I mean partnerships, I don't even mean like it has to be a business relationship. I just mean like these
Alignment.
mutual alignment is a great word,
Yeah.
right? And so when I come across somebody who's having struggles in those ways, like my immediate thing is great. I know a couple of people who can probably do you very well, and I will guide you in their direction. And they will help you to achieve in that area of life. And I would rather focus a little bit more on the emotional side, the conscious side, the mental framework side, the like purpose in life side, because those are the ones that get me even more excited. Again, like if we go the through line and we'll go back on this whole conversation, right? We've talked about Bitcoin, we've talked about all these things, but you notice my part of the conversation keeps coming back to these frameworks and how do you look at the world and how do you do the thing that's important to you and how do you identify yourself and how are you impacting via projects that have like that serve people in a tangible way,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like my obviously my lens upon the world revolves around this way, and I would rather spend my time in this space than to try to delve as deeply as you have into Bitcoin and cryptocurrency, or to delve as deeply as Garrett has into other forms of financial independence,
Right.
right? I'm just not able to. I'm fascinated by it. I'm going to continue to learn it. I learn from our conversations, and I'm a better person as a result of it. But it's not my specialty, and I don't need it to be.
Right. That makes sense. Well, we're glad to have you as a Bitcoiner, regardless.
Yeah,
Regardless as
brother.
if you evangelize it or not. Uh, and
Well, I
I'd
mean,
be.
I evangelize it, no
Oh,
doubt.
nice.
Like
Okay.
yeah. Like I am.
You're
I'll
on
be
the
really
team.
clear. I'm definitely on the team.
I'm doing the litmus
However,
test here. I have to
I
know whether or
always
not. I'm just kidding.
I look at it with the mindset of I don't care whether it's called Bitcoin or not. What I care about it is, does it support these values? Does it, like again, like going for what we talked about earlier in the conversation, right? Does it support these values? Is it promoting like this like financial sovereignty within people? Is it a fair system, etc.? Not that it could be done, but if Bitcoin ever did not fulfill those and something else fulfilled it better,
Mm-hmm.
I'm completely within integrity of going, and now this is the thing, right? I
Right.
feel no conflict internally as a result of that because I'm clear about what my drivers are.
Right.
So I'm less of a Bitcoin advocate and more of a Bitcoin is this incredible tool that leads you towards what I believe is really important in life, being financial intelligence, financial independence, and financial sovereignty.
That makes sense. It's a good. Most people don't think religiously about money either. So it's more relatable probably if you have a conversation with somebody and you're like, you should look at Bitcoin versus somebody seeking out the information. And well, I don't know what the difference would be really. Be nice to test that, do a split test on that, see how someone would look at like where someone would go if somebody like you that's respected in the field of trauma and like PTSD and what other things are you doing right now? Is that the most thing?
um,
Because didn't you
yeah,
do a lot of
so
art or video work and stuff like that?
yeah, so I've had a very varied life. Just for context, kind of everything else. Technologist for a long time, developed computer architectures for logistics software that's being used by most of the Fortune 500, right? So like I did that for a period of my life. Then I went into theater and was involved in theater and film for a decade. Then I got involved in doing these adventures where I'd go off and like drive an ambulance to Mongolia, etc. Right? Um, and along the way, I started a company around logistics and helped people with that. And then in the process of solving a lot of my issues over the last decade, I won't say solving, but understanding myself and healing a lot of traumas over the past decade, I developed a lot of expertise in PTSD, trauma, emotional work, and everything else. And so ultimately, where I see this going is I think that it's a tie-in of many of these things into a show that helps people understand themselves, understand where their roadblocks are, and helps them move forward out of that roadblock towards liberation. Like in for each person, that's going to be something slightly different. That's another reason I keep fingers in different pies, is
Mm-hmm.
because sometimes the conversation goes more towards the financial aspect. And while I'm not the expert that you are, I can guide people enough to have them get a good point of view to get them to their next step that they may need, right? Whereas for the next person, finances may not be an issue. Like there was a person I helped who was on a government stipend as a result of disability because he was a soldier, right? And so finances weren't really a concern for him, But then we got to have a lot of conversations around the trauma and the difficulties and the emotional work that he's been doing that leads him towards his next step of liberation. Um, for somebody else, it was, and this is a result of the I Am Listening calls that I set up.
Mm-hmm.
I had somebody who called me from Massachusetts who I didn't even know who they were. And in the course of the conversation, I just found out that they are a beautiful person who just has literally not felt heard or listened to in years, possibly a decade. And they just needed somebody to listen in order to like move through this mental cycle that they were in, this emotional cycle that they were in, and be able to see their life a little bit more clearly because I could articulate things back to them from my perspective, right? And then allow them to begin to step forward in their path towards liberation. So where I think all of this is going, long answer to a short question, but where I think all of it's going is ultimately a show about conversations, and listening and helping each person forward based off of what they need at the time, and then being able to give them the guidance that truly helps them. And at the tail end of that, guiding them towards people who are even more knowledgeable than I am,
Right.
the people that I'm learning from in order to help them further down that particular path.
Oh, that sounds like good work. It sounds like a good mission.
Dude, it sounds fun. Like again,
Yeah.
like how do you do the thing that you enjoy? Like the scheduling of it, the marketing of it, all those things, I am not excited by at all.
Mm-hmm.
Like to show up each day and have a show or a conversation or whatever else lined up, and to be able to go into it with my full heart and my full attention, like that's exciting. And so like that's what I'm essentially working to create and is coming into evolution right now.
You know, one of the things that I was thinking about before I was talking to Alan, he wrote the marketing, the business model books.
Mm-hmm.
Can't remember his last name right. Smith, Alan Smith.
Smith.
And we were talking about the book idea, and we were talking about, well, who do you want to reach? Who's your target audience? Why are you doing this? And one of the things that I kind of thought about was, do I want to influence the 99% of people that are yet to have Bitcoin or learn about Bitcoin, or do I want to influence the 1% of wealth and hustlers and like doers that then can influence everybody else? And
Mm-hmm.
it's an interesting conversation, and I think I would like to do both, um, because just talking to you about this, right? Like I think that's an amazing mission what you're doing. I think that's got the potential to help so many people. And if I was able to like somehow disseminate some pro Bitcoin information into like what someone like you is doing, like that would be so much more like more effective than me trying to reach all those people too. So maybe there's a way that, I don't know. I'm just kind of like got a marketing brain on this, I guess, a little bit. But since I I almost think it's dangerous for people to go to altcoins and stuff like that. I think like what's the most effective way for me to influence someone like you to be like not recommending altcoins to people, because I feel like it might end up causing PTSD because of all the losses they're going to have. So influencing influencers is kind of an interesting way to think about your mission, like
Oh yeah.
you're going to be influencing so many influencers that are going to make it more acceptable to speak about suicide and depressing thoughts and like how to deal with trauma and things like that. Like people like in MMT, like half the people there are like so open about the things that are going wrong with their lives and how they're getting over it, and things that they're trying out like to get over trauma. And that conversation is so important. um so yeah, influencers influencing influencers is kind of an interesting concept. Like, how do you become, rather than me to be, how do I become the Bitcoin guy? Like, how do I become the Bitcoin guy to people like, MMT folks who then go on and influence millions of people, um,
Yeah.
to not send people down a path that's going to cause them trauma from like losing 2 years and losing tons of money. And anyways, that's kind of one of the paths of conversation that Alan and I had. And
Yeah.
I'd be happy to be If you ever get any bug in your ear about like, well, maybe IOTA is the thing I should start recommending people, give me a call. I'll give you the brain dump on the technical landscape of like why this isn't good, why this is good. Maybe that's why I put myself in the shit. I put myself in the Twitter's verse to like really dig deep into the manure pits of altcoins to see if there's anything there, and then I can just brain dump it to people like you who are like doing really important work and influencing people. Maybe there's a thing there.
Dude, no doubt. I'm sure that there is, and I think it's okay to play on multiple levels, right? So, um, like the I am listening calls that I have going on right now are open to everybody. They're free. There's no barrier to entry. Anybody can sign up, right? Um, the
Awesome.
show that I'm creating is more towards like a mass of people, but I know that the market's going to be a little bit more limited to those who, you know, appreciate listening to me, like in my points of view, or interact with me in that way. Cool, that's there, so it gets a little smaller. Um, I have another company that I do with a friend of mine, Matt Pryor, called Adventure X, where we take small groups of people, typically 4 to 8 people, off on these wild adventures to like Bhutan. Like Bhutan
Oh, that
is
was so
typically only,
awesome. Following your
yeah.
social media on your adventures and stuff. I love it. I love seeing all that stuff. It's so cool.
So one of the reasons that we do something like that, like it's only 4 to 5 people for Bhutan that we take at a time, right? And the reason that I do that is because it's a deep connection, and quite honestly, this is a very expensive adventure to go on. It's not accessible to most people, but what it allows is these deep conversations like you and I are having right now between people who are able to lead or influence a lot of people, right? So like in the offerings and stuff that I have, I've essentially got like, the open source model that's available to anybody. I've got the, slightly more commercialized version of it that shrinks down the market a bit. And I've got like the more exclusive, I guess, the financially exclusive market, but also because we highly vet people, it's only people who have a good heart and a good mission and everything else. And that means that we get to work with people on multiple levels, right? The every man gets served, which is incredibly important to me because I think that so often that is left out. And to be clear, when I say every man, I mean every man, every woman, every person is probably a better thing. But I'm using every man as the generic term.
Mm-hmm.
But that person gets served while I also get to work with some of the change makers that have an influence upon thousands and tens of thousands and possibly even more people than I could ever reach myself, right?
Right.
And so I advocate that that's a good way to go. And if you're able to move into those things, 100%, my man, like
Mm.
play at the different levels. Be a person of the people and be a person of the people who are helping to lead the people. Like it's not a one or the other. You can play on both realms and thus increase the number of people who have access to a message and the number of people that are helped, the number of people that are served by something without excluding anybody.
Are you still doing the calls? Like, are you going to be doing them for a while, or are you kind of like stopping it soon?
No, my intention with them, the number of hours I allocate each week may grow and shrink based off the other projects that I have going on. But my intention is I want this to continue going for the foreseeable future, possibly for my life. I don't know, because it's this open avenue for people to access me, and it ensures that I don't become too insular or too isolated. It
Mm-hmm.
ensures that that there's never a full. I only have so many hours per week, but at the same time, there's not a required financial threshold
Right.
to get my attention, right? Because there's people who have zero means. There are literally, because I've had conversations with them, there are literally homeless people who are, fully deserving for my entire attention in the same way that somebody who's running a company is.
Right.
And if I have some type of financial barrier there, that means that I wouldn't get access to that and I would lose,
Yeah.
and they wouldn't have access and they would lose. And that for me is bullshit.
I mean, I kind of relate, but on a much different level. Like I'm trying to stay relatable to the average person that doesn't have a lot of money and that's just frustrated that the system feels like it's rigged against them and they're in debt up to their eyeballs, dealing with the high interest credit cards and student loans, because I was in that myself. And so I try to, like, whatever I can do, stay in that mindset and relate to those people rather than take the path of Bitcoin as like the new gold only, and high net worths. This is for high net worths. And like, if you got $1 million in the bank, you should put 100K in Bitcoin. And I don't want to go all that way. I think that's like, that's like a valid way to go. But also, like you, I want to relate with people that I used to be like them. I came from that world and I felt those things. And I think Bitcoin like changed my life, and I want to relate with them and still be in the same mindset of them as like, it's, I don't have $100, like I know what that's
Yeah.
like. But
Yeah.
I'm thinking that if like, maybe you should throw up a lightning wallet address on your site so that people can donate some Bitcoin to you. If maybe there's no financial barrier to entry, but like people can donate if they want. Maybe you'll get someone that gives you like a half a Bitcoin or something because they got some value. You never know.